Had we been standing on this spot on the 2nd of February 1916, this is the sight that would have greeted us.
Had we been stood at this point on the same day, this is what we would have seen.
In this video, we investigate the causes, events and results of the dramatic collapse of the Penistone Viaduct in February 1916. The viaduct, which carried the Lancashire and Yorkshire line across the River Don at Penistone, had been opened in 1850. Designed by John Crawshaw, it was 330 yards long and its highest arches stood 85 feet above ground level. The Penistone Viaduct had been constructed with solid stone blocks. It had seen its share of incidents in the decades since it had been opened. In 1884, a young man had stood on that parapet and plunged tragically to his death, an incident we covered in a previous video.
On the 2nd of February 1916, an incident occurred which made national headlines.
2 arches of the viaduct collapsed. We set out to the area around the viaduct to find out more about this dramatic incident. So at 4 minutes past on the afternoon of the 2nd of February, the Leeds to Penistone passenger service had pulled in over the viaduct and into Penistone station. The train had deposited its passengers on this platform.
The engine had pulled back onto the viaduct to shunt some goods wagons.
So there were 2 men on the engine, the driver by the name of George Lockwood and a fireman by the name of Butler. So as Lockwood and Butler were performing their shunting operations, they noticed a hollow starting to form in the rails of that viaduct there. So quickly thinking that there might be some danger, as indeed there was, they jumped out of their engine, ran along the tracks, there we go, ran along the tracks here to safety.
Reports said they raced along the viaduct as it sunk beneath their feet.
And it is said they reached the safety of the station by a hair's breadth. So a lucky escape there for Lockwood and Butler. So in a way it's fortunate the accident occurred when it did, which was at about 4:15 that afternoon, because at 4:40 a train was due to leave Penistone heading in that direction over the viaduct full of school children from the Penistone Grammar School. And had that plunged into the abyss down there, it would have been one of the major railway disasters in British history. In fact, I've read a report that said it had the potential, had that happened, to be another Tay Bridge disaster. If you're enjoying the content on this video, please consider giving it a like.
And if you'd like to consider subscribing, it's absolutely free.
We're a new channel on YouTube looking to expand and bring you videos about all types of history. To find out what happened in the next part of the story, we leave Penistone railway station, we make our way down Wentworth Road through Waterhall Park and to where the base of the viaduct still stands today, and we find out what the scene looked like down there on the 2nd of February 1916. So just a moment after Lockwood and Butler had scampered to safety, a few yards behind me, this viaduct came crashing down. In fact, it was the arch on the far side of the river. We've had quite a lot of rain recently and it's a little bit dicey getting over there, but that is appropriate because one thing that is reckoned to have caused the collapse of the arch on the other side of the River Don here was the fact there'd been very persistent rain in the days leading up to the viaduct collapsing. In January, it had been noticed that there was a crack near the top of the viaduct, but the railway engineers and officials reckon it wasn't bad enough to close the viaduct, and there were some works going on to repair it. So there had already been identified some weaknesses in this viaduct before it collapsed. So at the minute, we're standing as close as we can to where the viaduct collapsed. The pillar behind me was intact. The pillar just to my left was still intact, but it was the pillar that was driven into this hillside was the major one that collapsed. The engine that Lockwood and Butler had just vacated plunged down into the valley behind me. The rails were twisted and bent, pointing down in towards the valley of the River Don, where we are standing now. So mercifully, the force of the engine falling down into the valley had decoupled it from the wagons, so the wagons remained at ground level, although one of them perched over the main Sheffield to Halifax road for some hours, causing a blockage of traffic. So the only thing that had come down here was the engine. It was obviously completely destroyed. But at the minute, no loss of life, which was a merciful deliverance given the scale of this disaster to this viaduct. So eventually there was a breach of about 30 yards in this viaduct. Now this occurred, as I've said, on the 2nd of February 1916. Those of you who know your history will know that Britain had been involved in the Great War for about the previous 18 months. This was a main express line between Bradford and Leeds and London. Initially, trains had to be diverted via Wakefield and via Barnsley, but given all the heavy engineering works that were taking place in Huddersfield and Bradford, it was tremendously potentially disruptive to the movement of goods and people in the middle of the Great War. Also, there were lots of soldiers stationed around this area, and the temporary closure of the road was also very disruptive. In fact, at the time, according to newspaper reports, there were irresponsible rumours going around. They weren't specified what they were, but I can only imagine that given the heightened anxiety of the time, it might have been suggested that German spies had deliberately sabotaged the viaduct to disrupt the movement of people and supplies in the area. So the collapse had occurred on a Wednesday, and by the Thursday it was reported that dozens of sightseers had come to view the site of the crash. And not only sightseers, but there were a team of Royal Engineers who were stationed a few miles away at the Silkstone camp, who were brought here as an object lesson in how to construct and how to repair a viaduct. So it was used as a learning opportunity. But yeah, we have the disruption of traffic between Bradford and Leeds over there, Sheffield and down to the Midlands in the south in the other direction. So initially the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway Company arranged a bus service, a wagon service, to take people in that direction towards Denbydale and Cumberworth. But eventually there was a temporary railway station built, a halt called the Barnsley Road Halt, and we're going to take a look at it right now. Now, I've just said it was a mercy that there wasn't a train on the viaduct when it collapsed, and we seem to have got to a situation where the driver and the fireman had survived, no passengers were injured, but there was one sad eventual fatality caused by the collapse of this viaduct, and that was a man by the name of Edmund Peel, 46 years old. He was an employee of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway, lived over in Bradford, and he was a joiner, and he was one of the men contracted in to enact repairs of the viaduct, which we tried to get done within 4 months. I think it took about 5 months to do, but there were stones being hoisted up and one fell on him, hitting him on the back of the head and the neck. He wasn't killed instantly. He was taken to Huddersfield Royal Infirmary by special train, the other side of the viaduct, and he survived for I think just over a week, but sadly he slipped into his death. So there was a fatality caused by the Penistone viaduct collapse, but not immediate. A very sad tale there. So if you do come this way, look at the viaduct, remember the fate of poor Edmund Peel. So a great piece of engineering, this viaduct, but we've just told you about the life it took of Edmund Peel. We also made a video a few months ago about a young man called Elliot Hawkyard who inadvertently stepped off the parapet here to his death. So this wonderful piece of engineering has actually claimed lives. So yes, the blame shifting then began. George Armitage, one of the directors of the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway, at its annual meeting just a few weeks after the viaduct had collapsed, said there'd been no lack of foresight whatsoever. Regular checks were made of the viaduct and in fact all along the line, and essentially, in so many words, it was just one of those things. So yeah, trains were discontinued between Bradford and Sheffield for a few months, diverted via Wakefield and Barnsley, but eventually the viaduct was reopened in August 1916. Penistone Grammar School organised wagonettes to take the school children from the temporary Barnsley Road Halt, where we're going now, into the school. But what of that engine? It is said that the chimney of the engine that had collapsed into the viaduct was taken along the line to Brockhall station, about maybe 10-15 miles further up, and used as a plant pot for several decades. Does anybody know if that is true? Just walk up Barnes Road now, you can see the railway bridge in front of us. You can also see, if you take a close look, that over the years this bridge has had several altercations with lorries and buses trying to squeeze under it, not quite getting there. So we now walk up the steps that were built here in 1916 so people could still travel between Penistone and Huddersfield and beyond. So now walk up the very steps that were installed in February 1916 to allow passengers to access the temporary Barnsley Road Halt. And there's Barnsley Road. Busy even on a Sunday. I think the steps would have continued the other side of this fence up to the halt there.
Yes, this was very popular, wasn't it, John?
That's right, I've read that 11,000 tickets were sold from here to travel towards Huddersfield in the few months that this halt was operational. In fact, so popular was it that the governors of Penistone Grammar School and the councillors from Thurleston Council petitioned the Lancashire and Yorkshire Railway to keep this open on a permanent basis, but I can find no record of it in any archives, any newspapers after August 1916. So, Barnsley Halt, February to August 1916. I did actually find a reference from 1917 about the Barnsley Road Halt, and that involved a clerk who'd been working there during its operational months. He was actually convicted of embezzling funds by taking excess fare money from people and not recording it properly in the book. He put it down to lapses of concentration and a bit of laziness. However, he did bounce back from this, the young man. I found he joined the Royal Flying Corps during the First World War and ended up, ironically, becoming an inspector clerk at the Inland Revenue. And that was shortly after the war on the 1921 census. So there we go, what we think is a complete history of the Penistone Viaduct collapse of 1916. But if you know of any facts or any information that we didn't uncover, then please let us know in the comments below. I'm always keen to find out more about the past, particularly in our local area.
Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to join us next time where every journey begins with a path to the past.